Welcome to Makers of Tomorrow, the podcast where each episode we talk with founders, industry leaders, and innovators to explore the latest trends shaping brands and the consumer experience.
We are your hosts, Karine Mallet and Corey Gottlieb, founders of Replica, the social selling platform revolutionizing how brands connect, inspire, and sell in today's digital world. So whether you're a brand leader, entrepreneur, or just fascinated by the evolution of digital commerce, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Today, we dive into the radical new frontier of digital identity and engagement with Aileen Carville, the visionary founder of COLONII, an engagement layer bringing to life a population of AI-powered avatars designed for the world of social commerce, gaming, and influencer culture. COLONII isn't just about avatars. It's a bold counterculture platform, a living, breathing avatar society with its own norms, values, and societal dynamics. It's redefining what identity expression and connection look like in a world reshaped by AI and new generation culture. So let's dive in. Aileen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Corey and Karine. Great to be here.
Okay.
So let's start. You and I both come from the fashion industry, which make this conversation super exciting. So tell us, what's your background?
Yes, that's right, Karine. We met a number of years back when we started our journey on fashion tech coming from the fashion industry. So I started working in PR in London, fashion PR, worked on a lot of the kind of London Fashion Week circuit with the brands, mostly on the PR side. And then I moved in-house with designers, leading commercial and heading up PR as well. So those two hats kind of remained on me for almost 18 years. So a huge amount of experience working, London, Paris, Milan. And for me, back really felt that I wanted to address the wholesale business model and how that was delivered across Fashion Week. So I knew I wasn't going to build this myself per se, but I certainly like to know how things operate and work. So I ended up really trying to figure out if I was going to be a founder. I kind of felt, am I going to slot into somebody else who's going to maybe fix this and I'll go in with them? But I ended up doing this myself and I founded a virtual showroom platform. And that was incredibly exciting and very new and, a huge amount of success with that. Used AR, that's augmented reality, for the first time back in 2018, bringing virtual fit models to London and Paris Fashion Week. So that was a real first. Because again, I was able to get in front of these really big buyers and journalists who were covering Fashion Week and demonstrate this tech at a very early stage. And, it was incredible. Then COVID obviously happened, and you would imagine that would be a lucky rainbow. But it really accelerated the need for brands to rethink how they were working. It was a bumpy ride, but we certainly worked with a lot of strong customers who really survived COVID because they were using our showroom. Where we are today with COLONII, it was really those initial creating the holograms, the virtual fit model was really kind of the first sort of obsession of mine in terms of how do we create a silhouette that's really interesting, dynamic, and works for the industry on a B2B level. So when we had done that, I was starting to kind of work more with brands. They had a virtual showroom. We were then introducing their brands and introducing their experiences into the metaverse. And it was really looking at a silhouette that would fit into this sort of new era of expression and representation, and how a brand might want to use an entity or silhouette for their ready-to-wear collections, their products, etc.
But at a certain point, you must have kind of thought about a different business model, because originally you just had fit models, so you had different sizes of models, but now you have like a variety of avatars in your portfolio, right? So, how did you pivot to this avatar that is a little less human-like in some cases, and then you continue to create more of them?
Exactly. I was drawn to work by a photographer and a creative director who was actually doing a lot of work in media with some of my clients. And when I saw his work, I thought, this is actually how I envisage sort of a quasi-digital silhouette looking in
It's
the
bold
metaverse.
and different. What was your first reaction when you saw that? Like,
It looks, so that was Luke Nugent, who's my co-founder. And I was really drawn to his work. He was obviously looking to position his work where I was sort of investigating and working with brands. So we decided to come together because we really felt that we were able to solve this problem. And that's when we almost kind of abandoned realism in favor of going for this sort of a little bit more hyped up, surrealist looking character. So they started off as a population of 6, and then they go through a whole process, which we can talk about later in terms of how we actually create them and make them.
so you had 6, and how long does it take to create one for a brand?
Yes.
For your use?
So we created the 6 characters extracted from Luke's work. They go through a process where they are sculpted, digitally sculpted using ZBrush and Maya and a whole different series of technical processes. And we always wanted them to be very true to the original character that was created, which we were able to achieve. And so when you created the character, then you start to add in hair, the eye color, and different sort of signature elements that come with the kind of idiosyncrasy.
So end to end, how long would you say it takes to get one to market?
Okay, so when you get the character kind of as a 3D model, we then move it into a metahuman. And that metahuman allows us to make it much more pliable in terms of capturing that motion capture data, being able to kind of relay that, etc. So we've done all of these different processes. And then, of course, we have to dress the character as well. So you're looking at 4 weeks of a lot of work, very intense, very specific, technical work done at a very high level. And that's why we started off at 6. It was a huge investment of time and energy to really perfect them. And when we had the first 6, we felt, okay, now we will allow these characters to be popularized and kind of used by brands. We don't want to kind of overpopulate the COLONII club, so to speak, or society. We also can do custom characters. So this is where it potentially is an IP holder. It could be a well-known person who exists and wants to be created into a digital avatar with potentially a COLONII sort of veneer with the. So we've definitely been discussing this with brands. Also, brands may want to cast an avatar in a specific way, just like they would cast a real model, the sort of attributes that they would want. And, this is a process that we go through as well.
So can you explain with a brand, so how does it work when you start working with them? Do they create their own? Do they take one? What's the way
Yes.
they work with you?
So what happens, Luke, my co-founder, has done a lot of work in AI campaigns, a lot of big brands using him to create this sort of AI context openly, not cutting corners, but from an aesthetic point of view. So initially, some of those campaigns, AI models were generated because it was the early days of COLONII, but we were kind of figuring out when we have COLONII ready, who would look well in these campaigns. So then as the campaigns evolved and we were able to introduce these characters to the brands, they were opting for our characters more so than thinking of what a traditional model might look in this scenario.
So it was kind of deliberate for you to create like non-human elements to your avatars. I mean, you mentioned before some look non-binary, to have more fingers than a human has on their hand, and it seems like it was deliberate. I'm just curious, like the inspiration behind making it non-human, but it's kind of like a gaming world.
Yeah, well, when these characters have all sort of originated from Luke's creative work, each of the character, they all came from their own specific world, and we really had decided that COLONII was a sort of a separate entity. It wasn't the real world, but it coexisted in the real world in some way. And we really imbued each of these characters with their own lore, and which is very early on. It's kind of more commonplace to do that now, but each of the characters have a very rich background and also a future that we've kind of built around them. Some were drawn to Anya more than Tom. Tom was like a favorite with a certain demographic or a certain age group, etc.
I can't imagine the feeling you must have had when, you know, these characters were first created and put out in social and people started to respond to them, you know, and really like resonate with them. That must have been like an incredible feeling when you started.
It really was. We've actually had some followers do, you know, do a portrait of Anya, sent it to us and posted on it. Lots of different things. Like as if these characters, they're obviously not human. There's a slight blurred element going on there. And I can tell you that also the reason why this works is because when we look at our target market, our customer market, and that is Gen Z and Alpha, we kind of feel that there is a jarring effect between these characters that they're playing with online all the time. Yeah. And if they stop and rest for a moment and look up and they have to take instructions from, you know, somebody who looks like their mother or somebody who looks like their sister, we kind of feel that they would prefer to interact with something that's almost has a veneer of what they're looking at, but it doesn't contrast massively with the world that they're spending a huge amount of time on.
And be part of their world, absolutely.
Yes. And tap into the possible conversions that we can have on all of, you know, how they're going to be used across commerce, etc.
I have a really specific question for you, and I'm sure the audience wants to know. What's the most outrageous situation client has requested you create for them?
I will give a few hints. I can't say too much. It was a really fantastic client to be, you know, first of all, talking to him, introducing the characters to, but they wanted to go really very abstract and actually morph the characters into more organic shapes like trees and various, like really looking at the landscape and
like Transformers.
Yes, except with organic organic shapes and references. And I was really, oh my goodness, this is, you almost have to let go of the characters to see where people really want to go with them. And it's incredible. We've had another, it's in the performance arts, and with Tom, one of the characters that we have here, is part of this performance where it's kind of a call and response. And, you know, there's a whole soundscape that was created. Tom is within his bubble, kind of expressing himself on behalf of the performer.
Tom must be great at a cocktail party to speak to.
He honestly, yes. And he looks...
This guy seems like he's really interesting.
Yeah, so it is... I can kind of give you an exclusive. We
like exclusives on the Makers of Tomorrow.
And a worthy team to share it with, of course. But we are waiting today, actually, in New York, LA, and Atlanta. Dazed Max has just launched, and Dazed Max is a new platform dedicated to subcultures and sport. And in the New York themed print, copy, and digital, it features Leon in the campaign. Now we are.
That's excellent.
So it's fantastic. So it's a night campaign for this.
So perfect segue, and thank you for that. So let's talk about the business model, right? I mean, the fact that you've created this virtual world and you have created characters in this virtual world, and they are marketable, and brands in the, let's call it the real world, if you will, are interested in utilizing those characters. Tell us what your business model is.
First of all, we've got the characters that are live and being used in campaigns and different activations. We have some campaigns that we do as well. So they're kind of two of the main things that we're operating in currently. But we are planning to build a portal, which is kind of a booking portal for the avatars, which means that brands and agencies subscribe to COLONII and access the portal and avatars in order to activate them. So we have a subscription fee. We have to use the portal. We lease out each of the characters per campaign. We can custom make the campaigns, yeah.
You're a let's call it a new age modeling agency, right? I mean, those in the early days, brands wanted representation from people that represented their brand, or they felt would represent their brand properly. They would hire the agency, and ultimately, in the brick and mortar world, would bring a person to do photo shoots and represent your brand and do your commercials and so forth. And it sounds like your business model is very much the same, but you don't have the personnel issues.
Yes. So we use that as a sort of analogy to kind of describe it to potentially people who don't really know what avatars are and what they do. We're still very much a tech platform because there's so much technology going on with this, and kind of we have an agentic AI piece with the characters. So typically, if you remember what virtual influencers might have looked like, up until right now, a lot of them are now a lot of them moving forward are going to be totally operable through agentic attributes. And this is something that we are absolutely working on at the moment and have been for a number of months. So really is AI. We come from the fashion industry, and we understand how it works, and we've all done the shoots. We've hired and casted the models. We are never going to compete against them because there is a real use case for them always. Humans are brilliant at doing lots of beautiful things. Our avatars are just another genre of representation that potentially can maybe work better in certain areas that maybe humans just can't occupy, and certainly with that younger generation.
Sorry. Do you have different pricing for the different avatars, the most successful one, or?
Yes, well, that is built in. So when we mentioned IP initially, the IP for us in Web3 is really important and always has been. So the characters, we live now in a world with AI and this cascading effect of where originality starts and where AI begins, and then the end product that's sold on to a third party. So for us, the characters sort of digital DNA is put on chain and stored there, and any activation with a brand is minted, any aligned real world products or digital products, whatever that activation is. And yes, as the character has more popularity and can operate in more territories, appealing to more demographics, or just has that secret sauce thing that all goes on. We have Kate Moss in the world for a reason. She's fabulous. So, used to say that, and you can't, emulate that in some way. So, yes, the fee and the pricing would kind of.
Corinne knew Kate Moss in the very beginning.
Yes, exactly. And my paths crossed in London as well when I was there in the early 90s, early to mid 90s. So it was a great time back then. But yeah, I'm sure in Bergdorf, you definitely, and the buying season. Before.
Yeah. So now that your avatars are stars of social media, do you leverage them to promote your own business?
In terms of the popularity in social, yes, they have a presence there. We also allow them to join, well, for instance, Anya joined anthropologist Dr. Mancy on Pendulum Summit stage earlier in the year, discussing sort of agentic AI and the future of AI and companionship. And Anya was able to give her point of view to the audience about what this means for humanity, living with kind of AI and sort of synthesizing.
It's interesting you bring that up because the company that Corinne and I own together is called Replica Software, Replica with a K. And when we first started, we were contacted by another young company called Replica.ai, and they're still in business as well. And that their business model is creating an AI friend for you, for companionship. And, there's been lots of articles about, the positives and the negatives of that. So it's quite interesting. So many ways we can go with this conversation, but I guess one of the things that interests me is that, you created these characters and then they have a social media following. So what does social commerce look like to you with these avatars? And, does this enhance the world of social commerce?
Okay. So it's definitely something that we're working hard on at the moment. So with the characters and social commerce, how we feel these, a brand is drawn to the character to convey or promote a product or event, etc. We have already done a number of campaigns, and campaigns are very traditional in terms of the format. It is product and a person potentially wearing it, and it's either motion and stills, and it still works. It can be very beautiful still. What we do is kind of take that to the next level, where the campaign actually kind of comes alive, and the character can actually just come out of that sort of campaign sort of persona and really start talking to the audience about the product. This sort of really great selling mechanism, and that's something that you do brilliantly on a B2B level.
Can you measure a brand's lift or actual sales from, the campaign?
Well, yes, because what we do, we kind of bring in each of the product that the character's selling will have a specific code that's latched onto the character. That character metadata is then transmitted wherever it's going to be dispatched to sell and kind of promote or converse. And with that, this is where we're trying to garner some of this information.
So the business model for social commerce doesn't change that much, in the sense that a brand is hiring someone or an avatar, person or avatar, to help promote their products and services. They may have their own following in their own right, these people who you hire, but then they're carrying the brand's message. And I think what I hear you saying is the same as in the real world. There are unique tracking codes that are used, and affiliate links, and you can measure the traffic back to a brand's website, and therefore you can measure the sales. So, really what you're creating here is an alternative to what everybody else is doing. But, if you're a brand that hires an avatar from COLONII, you may be a little bit more hip and irreverent and reaching a different type of audience that, as you said, may not resonate if they look like their moms telling them what to do.
Exactly. And you are leaning into kind of Web 2 tools that exist. So we're definitely looking at, being able to really use AI in this sense as well. But
so it looks like those avatars are really like influencers. Do you see a world where they would have this own social media account? They would have a life after, like you would create a life that people can follow from the different campaign to inventing a life.
Yes. So we really believe that the characters have a persona and a life. Believe it or not, we talk about them not as like, oh, that one and this one. And we really call them by their names.
I'm not inviting them over for the holidays just yet, though, right?
They don't eat much. And I don't mean that because they don't have an appetite. They graze on pixels. Right. So yes, they already have their own social media accounts. I suppose one of the positives that we can say about these characters that a brand, brands don't want liability with personalities. Yeah. And I think that's where maybe a lot of celebrity endorsements and mega influencers go to the wall.
Which means that you have to be careful with the persona that you continue to create for these avatars, because they don't have to live in the real world, but you also don't want them to be involved with any of the real world issues, problems, taking sides on, maybe divisive issues and stuff. That's where Hollywood and celebrities get into trouble, if you will, in some of those situations. But you, as the curator of this avatar world, you have to make the avatar's life interesting, but also can't really reflect reality in some cases, because that just brings people back to their mother telling them things to do, or something that they may have said in the past.
Yes, they're not going to be in page 6 or whatever it is.
Listen, that's actually brilliant and safe for a brand.
Yeah.
So what does the next 3 to 5 years look like for the company?
So we will extend the population further. Currently, our roadmap is to build this portal to get these characters operating across lots of different channels, start generating revenue with this, really kind of working that out and making, avatars as a service, really, kind of building that at scale. as we progress, I feel that we're really in a position there with these characters. A lot of people are pursuing realism. Realism is great for, kind of digital twins of humans. We are definitely in a different a different genre. We are not
Yeah,
reflecting.
absolutely. It seems like you're bridging the gap between the gaming and online worlds
Yeah,
and marketing to those people who spend a lot of time in those worlds and bringing the brands that are more, let's say, traditional in nature right in front of this audience in a way that they can understand it and relate to it.
yeah. I'm not so sure that a lot of fashion brands absolutely see themselves in those environments. And I
But
think,
yet you've had fashion brands that you've worked with. If you go to the COLONII website, you have some really, good collaborations.
oh yes, exactly. No, I'm saying that they are open to using colony characters. Like, they're all really fantastic and everything, but I think the sort of space has evolved that it doesn't have to feel like they're in a game. It can just be anywhere. It doesn't have to have the confines of being a game, because I really feel, coming from the fashion industry and trying to articulate this to people who are in the industry as long as I am, gaming still kind of frightens them as a place
Yeah,
to
I get it.
invest money in and stuff like that. Whereas,
That's why this is even more brilliant because you're not in the context of a game where people might be shooting each other or there's different things that brands don't want to be associated with within the game,
yeah,
but you are bringing those characters that people relate to and understand out into a world where they can be promoting in the real world again without the baggage of Hollywood stars or the content that they're sitting in right
yes,
now. So it's
exactly.
really smart.
The sort of longer vision, 3 to 5 years, we really feel that building up this kind of society of characters that look and behave like this, they are immune to human behaviors, which makes them very indifferent. The characters aren't judgy. They're edgy. They're cool. You want to hang out with them. They don't have to know who's splitting up from who or any bad
Right,
news.
right. All the
Right.
all the all the gossip, like you don't have to know that stuff.
Just,
You should create the next round of politicians, avatars politicians.
I
But
know it might be a bad idea.
Karine asked a question before. Do you use your avatars to promote your brand itself? And I guess I'll ask a more broad-based question. Like, how do you let people know that your company exists and what you do? Like, what are your ways in which you reach the audiences that you want? Because I would imagine the audiences are the brands, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you want brands to utilize the avatars. But I would imagine as well, these avatars are becoming more and more famous on their own right. So you need to put them in front of their target audience so that they can understand who they are and kind of relate to them. So what is the way in which you reach your audiences to grow your business?
Okay. So yes, you're right. There are two specific audiences that we're kind of trying to attract. Firstly, let's say the end consumer, the younger generation. So that is mostly done on social and getting some really nice PR and press, kind of cool websites and magazines and stuff like that as well. And then obviously being aligned with a really strong brand such as Dazed, which really promotes subcultures and fashion. So I think aligning ourselves with platforms like that in terms of our content has been the strategy to date. In terms of the brands and kind of reaching out to them, we have quite a strong pipeline ourselves from working in industry. Obviously, LinkedIn again is very, very good. But I would say that again, Instagram, there's a lot of really notable people in the industry who are watching what COLONII does, and we've managed to get a few strong activations from that. But
Amazing. Aileen, I could talk about this all day with you. I think it's just fascinating. It's been an incredible conversation. COLONII is not just building technology, it's pioneering a whole cultural infrastructure. So thank you for sharing your story, your insights, your journey to all of our listeners. If you're curious about where identity, AI, and digital societies are heading, check out COLONII. That's colonii.net, COLONII.net. And I think you'll find it really fascinating. So thank you again, Aileen. Really enjoyed having you on the show.
well, thank
Thank
you for
you.
having me, and really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Thank you.